Welcome back to another episode of the 2024 NBA Draft Prospect Profiles here on the Field of 68, presented by Unified Healing. Rob Dauster, I got Terrence Oglesby with me, and today we're going to be breaking down none other than the two-time National Player of the Year, Zach Edey, fresh off of get this, TO, 25.2 points per game, 12.2 rebounds per game, 2.0 blocks per game, 2.2 assists per game, and a season where he shot 62.3% from the floor. He is a career plus 70 and plus free throw shooter while taking roughly 867 free throws per game as a collegian. Yeah. He is a guy who is an all-time great college basketball player. I would make the argument he's been the best college basketball player that we have seen probably since Tyler Hansbrough. Maybe you even have to go further back than that to be able to get to the level. Made it to the national title game. Back-to-back
maybe since Ralph Sampson. Maybe since Ralph Sampson.
Maybe since Ralph Sampson. He's been unbelievable at the college level. Best post scorer I think we've ever seen in college basketball, and I don't think that it's too much to say that. But he's a guy that we haven't seen this prototype too often in the NBA game. What do you make of him? What do you make of its transition? And what strengths does he have that will translate to the NBA game?
Well, he's a massive human, first and foremost. And he's a better athlete than given credit for. He can change sides of the floor. What scares
real quick on that, I just want to throw this out there. If you go and look at the combine at the agility run, the shuttle run, the three-quarter court sprint, the max vertical, and the standing vertical, Zach Edey better Donovan Klintman in all five of those categories. And I feel like that's not quite the narrative that people think of when they think about Zach Edey. They think of him as kind of slow and lumbering, and they think of Donovan Klintman as like the athletic one of the two, where I think
it's just their build.
Yes.
Klintman's bigger across the shoulders. He's slimmer down through the waist. Edey's he's got tree trunks for legs, literal oak trees. My man is massive. He changes into the floor better than I think people realize. And obviously, the first thing that comes up is, can he move with NBA players? Well, you know what? Not many people can. But what he can do is he communicates well on the defensive end of the floor. At the worst, he can be a curveball. Now, he's not this passing savant. Like people want to throw out Boban Marjanovic a lot. Boban could pass. Boban, you could center an offense around a post entry with Boban because he was so big. He was such a good passer, and he held the ball like an apple. Zach Edey is not quite like that. He is a physicality-driven guy. He's going to dominate the game for 5-minute spurts, because he's going to use every foul he's got at the NBA level, and he's going to carve out space. And while I don't think that he can play huge minutes at the NBA level, I do think that he can provide value because of that change of pace. Look, anytime a guy averages 25 points and God knows how many rebounds, like you've got to do it somehow. And the players at the NBA level are a lot bigger. The schemes are a lot different, and the processing power has to be much higher. Not a great passer out of the post, just okay. But a lot of it was because he was able to see over the defense. The help defenders coming over on some of these traps, if they bother to trap him, are 6'9", 6'10", as opposed to them being 6'2", 6'3", and you're just hoping to throw another body at them. It's going to be much more difficult for him to get out of the post if he ever gets it in there. And he's not getting all these foul calls that he got in college. If anything, he's going to start getting him the other way around with how he tries to root out a defender, because there's just the NBA during the regular season, there's not as much physicality. I do think his sturdy build, he has no like major injury history. The dude is built strong. He's built wide across his hips. He can hold off post defenders easily. The NBA doesn't play through the post anymore. But what it does do is it uses a lot of ball screens. You got to have a guy who can roll and catch. He can do that for sure, and he boards his ass off. So while he's not going to have these massive numbers that he had in college, he can provide value as a rebounder, as a rim protector, just being there and being huge. Everybody gets dunked on in the NBA. That's a given, but he's a big body that'll have 6 fouls, and throw in the fact that he rebounds so well, and he's a much better athlete than people give him credit for. I can see him carving out a nice little role. I saw a comparison the other day. Somebody compared him to Jonas Valanciunas, and that's
what I literally have written down. I have taller Valanciunas, not the ceiling of the Memphis days, but a good starter on a good team, averaging like 13 and 10 if he can make the 3-point stroke work as the best case scenario for him.
That is the
As
absolute
as
best
the
case
seal.
scenario. That is the absolute. But the physicality that Valanciunas brings, I could
Mhm.
see. I could certainly see that happening. I think Valanciunas is really, really freaking good player who's knocking down fadeaway jumpers and everything. Like Valanciunas is a really talented guy. He doesn't have the offensive skill set as Valanciunas, but the aggression, the way they play hard, I could see that comparison work. But the
I
skill
also
level,
like
the
I
skill
just
level isn't there. The skill level isn't there. He brute forced his way to 25 and 12, which is okay. Made a lot of money at Purdue by doing that. But
yeah.
like he's just not quite that skill wise.
Yeah, I'll talk about the comparison stuff when we get there because I have a take on that I'm curious your opinion on. A couple other things I want to throw out there about him. One, the dude is an absolutely tireless worker that is in unbelievable shape. Um, you don't see guys that weigh 300 pounds play 30 minutes a game, let
Yeah.
alone play 40 minutes a game as the focal point of everything on the offensive end of the floor.
And everything on the defensive end of the floor.
Yes.
Like
I
that's kind
think,
of the crazy part too.
and I think the way that he improved throughout his career, like he was the National Player of the Year in 2023. And I think by all accounts, he got better at just about everything heading into this past season, right? Like he hasn't stopped improving. He is one of these guys. You talk to people around that Purdue program, and like he is very, very, very strict in the way that he goes about his business, right? Like he has to go and do his jump hooks at this time, and he has to go in and do his conditioning at this time, and he has to go in, and he has to do this at this time and get the lift in at this point. Like he has to be regimented on his schedule. And if he like, I don't know what you call
That's
that
a
kind of
very NBA. That's a very NBA friendly way of being.
yes, he
Yeah.
has to like I don't know what you call that kind of personality type. If it's like a type A or whatever he has to do, like he's got to do that. So I don't know if it's like OCD or what, but he's got to do like okay, Zach Edey, if you see this, I'm not trying to make fun of you here, man. But this like that mindset is the way that he's kind of he's developed himself into a two-time National Player of the Year. And I think that eventually there will be opportunities hit for him to be able to overpower people in the post. But what you mentioned about being like a roll man, I think it was the 98th percentile on synergy in pick and roll man opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're 7'5" and 300 pounds and built the way that he is, I gotta imagine he's going to step into the NBA from day one and be like a top 5 screen setter in the league. And there is value in being a guy that is very good at being able to set screens.
Yeah, and a lot of people are going to be like, "Well, he's wider than he's allowed to be." No, he's just that big,
Yeah,
and
he's
like
just a monster.
and he's put together in a way. He's like big boned, like you know what I mean, like literally like big boned. Like he's not just super long, but like he's a wide person, and like him getting out there on the perimeter and setting screens on Pat Bev. Pat Bev's going to want to fight him. So
Mhm.
like those kind of things, they provide value, especially going against these pesky defensive guards. Man, you run into two of those, your head's peeking over your shoulder the rest of the game. He can bring that value. You talked about his free throw shooting, and he's throughout the course of his career, he was all above 70%. That's all great and good. That dude's never going to take a three. Like he's just not outside of a blowout where somebody you know they need 100 points or something like it's or 100 to get to 120. He's never going to take a three, and he should be okay with that. There to me, like having him at the combine go out and shoot threes while he's warming up, it's like, yeah, I get what you're trying to do, but man, just be dynamite in your role, and that's not going to be your role. Be a guy who can dribble handoff, set a hell of a screen, and help some of these super athletes get downhill. That's what
Mhm.
you need to embrace, and you're going to be able to get paid money for a long time if you embrace just that.
Yep. For
Crazy part
weaknesses,
is if this is 20 years ago, he's a top 3 pick.
yeah,
20 years ago.
he's the number one pick, not
Yeah.
just top three. He's the number one pick without question. For the weaknesses, I wrote just what is he going to be as a passer? What is he going to be as a shooter? I'm not as worried about what he'll be defensively because, like, I kind of know what he'll be defensively. He's going to play drop, and they're going to make sure that he excels at being 7'5" and just in the way, right? There's a value in a role to kind of just be in the way as a drop coverage guy. But I don't think that we've ever seen him when he's not the focal point of what things are going to be offensively. Like he got 100 post touches a game the last 2 seasons. When he was in the game for 20 minutes a game 2 years ago, he probably got 50. Every time he was in the game, they were throwing the ball to him or running stuff through him. What is he when he's not having the ball run through him? I think he'll be effective. We just have never seen him actually do it and how well that translates to the league. Whether you are a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. After a 6-month season loaded with cross-country travel, I can promise you that proper recovery is a priority for me these days. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this episode of the Field of 68. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or the EE system. If you haven't heard of the EE system yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in New Jersey or at one of the hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. If you're interested in experiencing the EE system technology for yourself, go to unifiedhealing.com/unified68 to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/UNIFYD, the number 6, the number 8. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including the EE system. I'm all right. Let's get into the conversation about his NBA comparison, because I do. The one thing I will say is this. We talked about Jonas Valanciunas, right? He is 5 inches taller and 40 pounds heavier than Jonas Valanciunas. That's kind of like comparing Dalton Connect to Kevin Durant, right? If you think about the differences in height and weight. And so I don't think that there's really a comparison for him. There are 3 guys currently in the NBA, TO, that are listed at 7'3" or taller. Do you know who they are? Boban,
Wemby, Boban,
Wemby, Bol.
and Bobo. Well,
Yeah.
Bobo. Yeah.
He's not Wemby. He ain't Bol, right?
And he ain't Boban.
Yeah, and we talked about Boban. Like, I could see him being in a similar usage kind of role in terms of coming in for specific matchups and finding ways
a little bit earlier in his career. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a better athlete than Boban.
Yeah. So I don't think that that's a perfect comparison either. So my point is, there have been 2 guys in recent drafts. Okay, before you go, 2 guys in recent drafts where we've seen their body type and seen what they are and been kind of like, I don't know what to compare, like how to compare this dude at the next level. For one was Zion Williamson, and that was when he was going from high school to college. I think he was like the number 5 recruit in his class. Like, he was when he was coming into Duke, everyone was talking about RJ Barrett, and there was a lot of hype about Cam Reddish, and they were like, yeah, they're getting Zion too, but we'll see how that works out. And then once we saw what he actually was, and it didn't really matter what his body type was, he's just going to go out there and dominate. Look at what he turned to in college, and if he could stay healthy, what he would be in the NBA. The other guy is Chet Holmgren. And while Chet still has some flaws as a player that I think he needs to work on, I think that anybody that doubted his body type being effective in the league kind of got those questions answered this past season, right? Like, I don't know if he's necessarily a perfect player, but I think that he's going to end up being a really, really good NBA player for a really long time. I don't know if Zach Edey quite has that ceiling, but outliers are outliers for a reason, right?
We've never seen curveballs.
Yeah,
he needs to go to a coach that can rely on him for stretches as a curveball to come in for 6.5 minutes between timeouts or something like that. That's kind of what he needs to be at the NBA level. Sorry for interrupting you. Go ahead.
No, I was pretty much done with my point. We've never seen him before. So I don't think that there's necessarily a way to project him based off of precedence, if that makes sense. It's either going to work or it's not. And I think if you're a creative coach, you'll find a way to be able to make it work. And in this draft class, where once you get past like probably the top 7 or 8 for me, there's not a lot of certainties. I'd be willing to roll the dice on Zach Edey somewhere in like the late lottery to the late teens. And I think that if you are,
I think late teens to mid 20s is your
Mhm.
is where I would do it. Because the teams that are drafting at that spot, they already have pieces in place, and you're bringing him in to be kind of this ancillary, something different curveball in. The comparison I have, he played at Georgetown, made it to the Final Four years ago, and played for the Pacers for a while. Roy Hibbert, 7'2", 7'3", maybe an inch or two shorter, but both were pretty dominant. And I think Hibbert was like at 14 and 10 when his senior year in college. So there's going to be discrepancies. But the difference is Roy Hibbert played with 4 other guys that played in the NBA.
Mhm.
So like there's a big difference in what they were playing with. Not taking away from Purdue, but somebody trying to tell me some of those guys are pros, you're wrong. They're just the teams that Hibbert was playing for were much, much better. What Hibbert was having to do later in his career, where they quit doing jump hooks and they were all doing ball screens and stuff like that, I think you're going to see that. Hibbert made over $70 million in his career. I don't think that Edey's going to make that much money because of how the game has changed. The post up is the least effective play in the game right now, and especially if you're not passing well out of it. So I think a lot of the things that they both do well are very comparable and very similar. Uh, I do think that Hibbert had to change his body. Zach Edey doesn't have to change his body, and he's a little bit better of an athlete. But I just feel like in today's game, it's just so difficult for, not plotter is the wrong word for him, but a guy who athletes are going to attack, and there is a different level of human in the NBA. Having watched it for 40 games this year with the Hornets, these guys are so good and they are so unbothered by size. Actually, it's an incentive when they play size, because they're just like, I can get him. There's going to be a lot of testing early. He's going to foul, and he's going to foul hard. But he's going to be able to come in and bring some physicality to your team, if nothing else, just to kind of change the pace and flow of the game, provided that the coach wants to use him as that curveball, like I've talked about.
Yeah. I agree with everything you just said. That Roy Hibbert one is a good comparison. I also think that part of the reason why the end of Roy Hibbert's career wasn't as good as the beginning of Roy Hibbert's career is
Game
because
changed.
yep, he was there as the game changed. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. I will be rooting for Zach Edey. I love Zach Edey. I think that he's a great kid and a great story, and something that we did not celebrate enough while he was in college.
He's going to be a pro. Like, he's just going to be a pro. Every day he comes in, you alluded to it some. Like, every day he comes in, he's going to come, he's going to work, he's going to punch his card, he's going to be a good teammate, this, that, and a third. I think he's going to be a good pro for a while. It's just the value of that kind of player right now. It's just why we see so many more big guys staying around in college.
100%. All right, T.O., it's been a pleasure. Zach Edey, I think he hangs around the league for 8 to 10 years, and we look up in like 2032, and it's like, oh, look at that. Zach Edey's coming in for 5 minutes here in this random series because we wanted to see if we could figure out if it could work in the playoffs. So Zach Edey, Field of 68 NBA draft prospect profiles. Make sure to hang around. We have a mock draft where we're going to be putting together a full first round mock draft here with a bunch of NBA draft experts. So make sure to stay tuned to Field of 68. That'll come about a week before the NBA draft actually happens. So until then, appreciate you being here. For Terrence Oglesby, I'm Rob Dauster. See you next episode.